Okay, so you're ready to jump into entrepreneurship,
Uh-huh.
and Connecticut's calling your name, right?
Got it.
Thinking about forming an LLC.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a deep dive today into everything about LLCs in the Constitution State, Connecticut.
Yeah, a lot of folks think they know about LLCs, but
It's more complicated.
yeah, there's definitely some twists and turns, especially in Connecticut, you know?
I mean, we know the basics, right?
Right.
Liability protection,
Yeah.
maybe some tax benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But Connecticut's got to have its own special things, right?
Yeah.
We got to unpack all that.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this free LLC thing in Connecticut.
Okay.
Because, I mean, who doesn't love free rent?
Right.
But I think everyone's thinking the same thing when they hear free LLC.
Oh, yeah.
What's the catch?
Yeah, what's the catch? There are some services like Inc. Authority that do offer LLC formation, free LLC formation, but they're really giving you the basic, like the bare bones, So the real value comes from understanding how to use that framework within Connecticut's like specific legal and business landscape.
So it's kind of like they give you the car, but you got to know how to drive it.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. You got to know the rules of the road in Connecticut.
So what's like a Connecticut-specific thing that someone forming an LLC really needs to know about?
Well, for example, Connecticut has what's called a publication requirement.
Okay.
So after you form your LLC, you actually have to announce it like in a newspaper, a local newspaper.
What?
Yeah, it's a little bit old school.
It sounds like a little bit of a pain.
It can be. And a lot of people don't realize it. It's like this little detail.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, it can actually lead to your LLC being dissolved, So you got to be careful.
Wow, so that's a pretty big deal then.
It is, yeah.
And that's where a service like Inc. Authority would come in and say, hey, don't forget this.
Exactly. They can guide you through all those little nuances.
Okay, so it's not just about the cost savings. It's about not messing up, basically.
Right. Making sure you're doing everything by the book.
All right. So before we get too deep into any one service like Inc. Authority, let's just talk big picture. What are just like the overall pros and cons of forming an LLC in Connecticut?
Well, one of the big pros is that Connecticut is really pro-business.
Oh, okay.
They've got a lot of resources, a lot of support for entrepreneurs.
Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, like mentorship programs,
Yeah.
funding opportunities, a lot of networking events.
Yeah.
So it's a good environment to start a business.
Okay, that's good.
And then on the tax side, Connecticut doesn't have a separate LLC tax,
Okay, that's helpful.
which can be a big advantage. In some states, you've got this extra layer of taxes.
Right.
But you do still have to consider things like the state's corporate income tax and the sales tax, which can vary, depending on what your business is, what industry you're in.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Connecticut's not known for being a low-tax state.
Right, exactly. So you got to look at all the angles, right?
Yeah.
But overall, it's a pretty good environment for LLCs.
See, this is what I mean by deep dive,
Yeah,
right? It's not just like LLCs are good. It's like, well, what about this? What about that?
Exactly. Got to look at the detail.
We're looking under the hood here. Okay, so let's talk money because obviously, a service like Inc. Authority is attractive because it's free, but I feel like there's always more, right?
Right. There are always going to be costs involved in running a business.
Right.
So even though you might get the LLC formation for free, you've got to think about the ongoing costs. Like, for example, you need a registered agent in Connecticut. That's required. And then you have annual report fees. So those can add up. So it's important to factor those into your business plan, from the beginning.
Yeah, because free can turn into not so free pretty quick if you're not careful. So for someone who's listening to this and they're kind of weighing their options, they're thinking, okay, free sounds great, but maybe I need more hand-holding. What's your advice to them?
I'd say think about your long-term needs. If you're comfortable managing all the ongoing compliance stuff yourself, filing paperwork, keeping up with deadlines, then a free service might be a great starting point. But if you want more support, maybe you want legal advice, tax assistance, things like that, then a paid service might be a better investment in the long run.
Yeah, peace of mind, maybe.
Exactly.
Because that stuff can get complicated.
Oh, yeah, especially as your business grows, it gets more complex.
Right.
So it really comes down to, like, what are your goals? What's your comfort level with all the legal and administrative stuff?
Yeah.
You got to weigh your options and choose what aligns best with your business.
So figure out what you need and then go from there. I think that's a really good point to end on, actually. It's not just about the upfront cost. It's thinking about the long term, the big picture. right?
Absolutely.
So I think the perfect thing for our listeners to think about as they're considering Connecticut, considering forming that LLC, is don't just think about that first step. Don't just think about getting it set up.
Right.
Think about everything.
Think long term.
Long term, think about Connecticut, how it's different from other places. Think about what you're going to need down the line, and then choose the path that sets you up for success.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Connecticut's a great place to do business, but you got to be prepared.
Connecticut, the Constitution state.
Right. Yeah.
Get that LLC going.
Get it going.